What if I told you there's this revolution happening right across the military, Silicon Valley, high performance labs? The ultimate edge isn't some new tech or, a secret weapon. It's actually about intentionally altering your state of mind. We've got a stack of sources today, and honestly, they all seem to point to this one pretty startling idea. People are actively trying to achieve this radical advantage by, well, deliberately flipping a switch in their consciousness.
That really is the heart of it, yeah. The core subject we're digging into is ecstasis. We're going deep into sources that try to define it, look into how it's being adopted by really diverse groups. Think Navy SEALs, think Google Founders Low, and then we're going to try and break down exactly what happens, inside the human experience when that switch gets flipped.
Okay, so our mission here is to unpack what this fire, this internal thing actually is. Why does it matter so much that people globally are spending, what, $4 trillion a year chasing it? And maybe most importantly, why is understanding the biology behind it becoming like the shortcut to peak performance and just being really well informed? You've shared some really fascinating stuff, so let's get into the history. Where does this drive start?
Well, the word itself, ecstasis, it gives us a clue. It literally means to stand outside oneself.
Hmm.
The definition is basically an altered state where, normal waking consciousness just kind of vanishes. It's replaced by intense euphoria, often a connection to some greater insight or intelligence. The modern scientific term, which came about in the 70s, is flow.
Right, flow. And researchers define that as the optimal state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. Pretty straightforward.
Exactly. And the markers are things like focus so intense, your sense of self just disappears, time gets warped, and performance, it just skyrockets. But like you said, this isn't new. The sources really anchor this search way back to the classical world, ancient Greece specifically.
Yeah, you mentioned this never-ending story starting way back in 415 BCE. It's kind of amazing how much trouble stemmed from what sounds like, well, an ancient party gone wrong.
Oh, it was much more than just a party. It involved Alcibiades, this Greek general and politician. He got charged with impiety because he supposedly stole this sacred state-altering drink called kykeon. Stole it for an infamous sort of ritual, the bacchanal, and this kicked off a huge political mess that, believe it or not, contributed to the trial and even the execution of Socrates. I mean, that's a massive historical impact for essentially one night of unauthorized consciousness alteration.
So what made this kykeon so potent, politically and, I guess, spiritually?
Because it was the core element of the Eleusinian Mysteries. This was a 2,000-year-old initiation ritual. It wasn't just booze. Kykeon was likely a potent psychoactive brew, and was used ceremonially alongside these really elaborate 9-day rites. These rituals involve things like sensory deprivation, intense chanting, drumming, physical exhaustion. All techniques we now actually recognize as flow triggers, designed to, quote, profoundly alter consciousness. The aim was catharsis, sure, but also a heightened level of insight.
Ah, okay. So the substance was part of it, but the real key was the intentionality behind changing the state, right? To gain knowledge.
Precisely. The modern search is really just a continuation of that old Prometheus myth, stealing fire, which stands for knowledge, power from the gods. They weren't just after a good feeling. They wanted a shortcut to being better informed, getting that competitive edge through wisdom.
Okay, so if Alcibiades was the ancient guy stealing the fire, who are the modern Prometheans? Let's start with maybe the most surprising place, the military.
Yeah, the sources show the Navy SEALs rely heavily on this state of collective awareness. They call it group flow or ecstasis. Their operating environment is almost always what they call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, just constant chaos. And in those high-state situations, when that flow switch flips, they stop acting like separate individuals worrying about themselves.
They become a collective unit. You use the term hive mind. How do we know this is actually an altered state, not just, say, extremely good training? What's the real difference?
The difference is the individual ego dissolving. It's a literal neurological shift. They reach a state where awareness is shared, intelligence gets amplified across the unit, and fear gets divided. The sources point to that mission to capture Al-Wazoo. Commander Rich Davis mentioned that success wasn't about just taking him out. It was about the incredibly precise coordination needed to capture him alive. That kind of accuracy in that dynamic life-or-death scenario. It's only possible when the individuals synchronize into that collective awareness ecstasis provides. It's really beyond just training. It's a cognitive shift they need.
That's fascinating, and it contrasts sharply with the corporate world, where the stakes are, reputation, billions, not immediate survival. Google's founders, Page and Brin, they used this really unconventional, almost ritualistic way to hire their CEO, right?
Yeah, they figured out that standard metrics, resumes, interviews, they just couldn't tell them what they needed to know for the top job. They needed someone who could genuinely set ego aside, adapt instantly. So they used Burning Man, that temporary chaotic festival city in the Nevada desert, this kind of brutal 5-day filter. Psychologically, it was maybe akin to BDS Hell Week for the SEALs.
Using Burning Man for CEO vetting seems wild.
Yeah.
Doesn't putting a candidate in that kind of crazy environment introduce all sorts of biases, or was that the whole idea?
That was the whole idea. The environment itself provided this intense communal vocational ecstasy, as the source puts it. They weren't testing Eric Schmidt's CV, they were testing his capacity for flow. Could he handle that unpredictable, novel context? Could he merge his ego, his management style, with the team when all the normal rules were gone? His ability to navigate that chaos, to adapt and not just fight it, that was seen as crucial. They wanted a leader who could handle the fire, not someone demanding a predictable boardroom.
Incredible. SEALs and Silicon Valley founders basically landing on the same underlying mechanism. Okay, let's get deeper into that mechanism itself. When that switch flips, what are the universal things that happen? The measurable characteristics of ecstasis.
Right, so researchers have kind of boiled it down to 4 main characteristics. The acronym is STER, hell, selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. And this is where we get into the pure neurobiology of it.
Okay, selflessness first. The sources talk about silencing the nag. What's actually quieting down in the brain?
That silencing comes from something called transient hypofrontality. It sounds technical, but it just means the temporary shutdown or dialing down of the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. The PFC is like the CEO of your brain.
Yeah.
It handles planning, judgment, anxiety, that constant internal chatter about yourself. So when the CEO deliberately takes a break, it allows for this really important subject-object shift.
And why is that shift so important for performance, for growth?
Because without the PFC constantly defining you, you get distance. That neurotic voice, the one saying you're not good enough or worrying about bills, it gets muted for a bit. You gain perspective on your everyday identity.
Yeah.
Parent, employee, whatever, and realize it's more like a removable costume with zippers, as one source vividly puts it. And that realization, according to Harvard psychology research, is maybe the single biggest thing you can do to accelerate personal growth. Because you stop defending this fixed idea of yourself and become way more adaptive.
That really makes the SEAL's hive mind click, doesn't it? If your ego's dialed down, you actually can merge with the team. Okay, next, timelessness. Why do people in flow literally lose track of time?
Again, it ties back to the PFC taking that break. The prefrontal cortex temporarily loses its grip on separating past, present, and future. It plunges you into what's called the deep now. The brain basically reroutes all the energy normally used for thinking about time towards just pure, intense focus on what's happening right now.
And when you're that focused, taking in information faster, the moment itself seems to expand, right?
Absolutely. Those times you get completely lost in something difficult, maybe scrolling online, maybe playing a sport, and suddenly realize 15 minutes vanished. That's a little taste of it. And crucially, with the PFC less active, its usual braking effect on other systems lifts. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, it calms right down. If you're not worrying about the past or stressing about the future, fear just dissolves.
Okay, so if fear is down and judgment is muted, that leads straight to effortlessness. Performance feels easy.
It does. And this is a huge reason people chase this state. It feels good because it's intrinsically rewarding. You get this powerful rush of neurochemicals, dopamine, anandamide, endorphins. This creates this really enjoyable drive that just completely flips the script on that old suffer now, get rewarded later ethic. You're driven by the pleasure of the activity itself, which makes you want to do it again.
And that powerful drive translates into huge results, right? We've got that McKinsey stat that's just mind-blowing.
It really is. The McKinsey study found top executives are up to, get this, 500% more productive when they're in flow. They can literally achieve in one day what might normally take them a whole week. When you think about the economic impact of a 5x productivity boost, well, the obsession with cracking the flow code starts to make perfect sense.
Totally rational. Okay, and the last one. Richness. This sounds like the brain getting a data upgrade for creativity.
Pretty much. It's amplified information processing. Normally, your conscious mind handles maybe 120 bits of information per second. In ecstasis or flow, that capacity just skyrockets. You get heightened awareness, you're integrating way more data, and creativity increases. This richness is absolutely vital for tackling what are called wicked problems.
Wicked problems. For anyone unfamiliar, those are the really complex challenges like poverty, climate change,
Hmm.
things with no single easy fix, right? They need you to hold multiple, often conflicting ideas at once.
Exactly. You need that information surge to see different angles, multiple potential solutions simultaneously. So when you add it all up, the effortlessness, the fear reduction, the massive insight boost, you see why this state is becoming the ultimate target for competitive advantage everywhere.
Hmm. And if the benefits are that huge, maybe we shouldn't be surprised the whole world seems to be chasing this state, often kind of blindly.
That's the really crucial next piece here. When we zoom out to the general public, the global altered states economy is estimated at roughly $4 trillion a year.
4 trillion. That number is just staggering. It's purely for a shot at relief or insight. What does that figure even include?
It's everything from legal substances like alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, sort of our daily ways of tweaking our state, to recreation, like video games, action sports, the whole self-help industry, therapy, counseling, even things like the EDM scene. That $4 trillion figure, it's like a global measurement of, well, how badly we want to get out of our own heads, even just for a moment of escape, relief, or maybe a glimpse of that peak experience.
Right, so you've got the masses spending trillions, often just trying things out, mostly looking for relief. But the elite groups, the SEALs, the Google founders you mentioned, they're not relying on chance anymore, are they? They're moving past just consuming things.
Correct, and that's the critical difference.
Hmm.
Seeking accidental relief versus engineering intentional mastery. By understanding the precise neurobiology of ecstasis, knowing the actual knobs and levers in the brain, these groups are moving beyond guesswork towards what the sources are calling enlightenment engineering.
Like we saw with the SEALs Mind Gym, using things like neurofeedback to literally guide the brain into the right state, that low alpha high theta brainwave pattern linked to peak performance.
That's the future unfolding right now. Access to these high-performance states is becoming deliberate. It's measurable, repeatable. They aren't just hoping for flow, they're actively triggering it.
And this deliberate tuning, that feels like the real revolution because it suggests our upper limits, human potential. It might be way higher than we thought. If neurofeedback can speed up learning that much, what's the ultimate impact?
Well, early research already gives us a pretty shocking clue. Neuroscientists working with DARPA, using neurofeedback to prompt flow states, they found soldiers could solve complex problems and master completely new skills up to 490% faster than normal, nearly 5 times faster. So think about this. If access to these intentional high-performance states, this enlightenment engineering becomes more widespread in the next decade, what happens when regular people can solve problems, learn skills almost 5 times faster than today? It's potentially a revolution that could be nothing less than a new kind of great awakening in what humans are capable of.